You know, when we think about the Russian Revolution in 1917, we usually think of politics, right? A whole empire toppled. But it was also an artistic earthquake. I mean, if you're going to build a brand new society, you need a new kind of art, a new way to see the world. And in that moment of chaos, a bunch of radical filmmakers decided the camera wasn't for entertainment. Nope, it was a tool to build a new reality. And what they created was one of the boldest, most influential experiments in the entire history of film. So, let's get into it. This quote from Dziga Vertov, who was basically the movement's chief prophet, just nails their whole mission. They weren't just making movies, they were declaring war on the old way of doing things. To them, traditional movies with actors and stories, that was all just bourgeois poison, a relic. Their goal was huge, to invent a whole new cinematic language, one fit for a brand new world. So, here's our roadmap. We're going to trace the rise and fall of this incredible story. First, we'll look at the world they were rebelling against. Then, we'll see how they tried to forge this new language. We're going to do a deep dive into Dziga Vertov's totally wild Kino eye theory and see how it played out in his masterpiece. And then, we'll watch as this whole grand experiment comes to a very sudden, very dramatic end. Okay, so to really get just how radical these filmmakers were, we first have to understand what Russian cinema was like before the revolution. It wasn't some blank slate. It was a big, booming business with its own stars, its own popular genres, and audiences who knew what they wanted. So movies showed up in Russia pretty early on, just a few months after they first appeared in France. But for like a decade, it was all foreign stuff. That all changed in 1908 with a film called Stenka Razin. It was a pretty simple little movie about a folk hero, a Cossack rebel. But people went nuts for it. It was a huge hit, and it kicked off a massive domestic film boom. By 1912, Russia was cranking out over 100 films a year. They were building their own cinema from scratch. And what were people lining up to see? Well, think high drama, low morals. The biggest hits were these sensational melodramas, often called sex and suicide potboilers. There was even something called the Satan genre, which was all about the occult, mysticism, and, apparently the sexual shenanigans of monks and nuns. Directors like Evgeny Bauer were masters of this style. Gorgeous, elaborate sets, really theatrical acting, and plots designed to give you a shock. And right here, this is the main event. The new avant-garde filmmakers saw all that and said, we are the exact opposite. Where the old guard wanted to make money, they wanted to make a revolution. Where old films were just copying the theater, they wanted a pure, totally new language for cinema. Their heroes weren't rich people, they were the masses, the workers, and their ultimate hero, the machine. It wasn't about telling a story anymore. It was about creating a feeling, a sensation, through the power of editing, or as they called it, montage. So the Bolshevik Revolution comes along and just blows up the old film industry. The studio bosses literally packed up their cameras and fled the country. At first, the new government was pretty hostile to movies. They saw them as this decadent, bourgeois junk. But then, they realized they had an incredibly powerful tool on their hands. And this is the pivot. In a country that was huge and mostly illiterate, film was the perfect way to educate people, to persuade them, to build a whole new way of thinking. This wasn't about escaping reality anymore. Cinema was now a tool of the state, a weapon in the class struggle. Its job was to help engineer the new Soviet citizen. And this demand for a new kind of film is what kicked the door wide open for the avant-garde. So what was their manifesto, their core beliefs? Well, first, film is its own thing. It's not just a play you record with a camera. And its most important tool isn't the story or the actors, it's montage, the edit. Crashing images together to create new ideas. Now, someone like Sergei Eisenstein saw montage as conflict, like a punch to the gut. But for the real purists, like Vertov, montage was about organizing the truth. Their raw material was reality itself. Actors, scripts, stories, that was all just cinematic poison. Their true north, their ideal, was the machine. Perfect, functional, rhythmic. The very thing they believed would build their socialist utopia. Now, among all the big thinkers of this time, and you had some heavy hitters like Einstein and Kuleshov, there was one guy who was just the most radical, the most uncompromising of them all. His name was Dziga Vertov, and his theory of the Kino eye was the movement's most extreme, and honestly, its most influential idea. Okay, so what on earth is this Kino eye? Is it just a cool-sounding name for a camera, or was Vertov thinking about something way bigger, way more radical. For Vertov, the camera wasn't just a machine for recording things. It was a better eye. He argued that the human eye is, well, it's flawed. We get tired, we get distracted, we can only be in one place at one time. But the camera, the Kino eye, it's perfect. It can speed up time, it can slow it down, it can see things our eyes could never notice. And Vertov believes that by capturing all these little pieces of reality and then editing them together, he could show us the world as it really is, a deeper truth our own eyes could never see. And Vertov was a purist. He had incredibly strict rules. His whole mission was to capture life caught unawares, or жизнь врасплох in Russian. And this meant he threw out all the tools of normal filmmaking. No actors, they're fake. No scripts, that's just imposing a fake story onto reality. No sets. His only subject was the real world, the rhythm and pulse of a modern Soviet city and its people, all seen through the cold, perfect gaze of his mechanical eye. So theory is one thing, but what does it actually look like? Well, in 1929, Vertov released his masterpiece, Man with a Movie Camera. This is the ultimate expression of his whole Kino eye philosophy. It's a movie with no story, no actors, no characters. It's just this dizzying, incredible symphony of a city. And the way it's built is absolutely fascinating. So to really get this film, you have to realize you're watching 3 movies at the same time. On one level, yeah, it's a documentary about a city from morning till night. But then Vertov keeps showing you the second layer, how the movie is being made. We see his wife and editor, Elizaveta Svilova, literally at her desk cutting together the shots we're watching. And then there's a third level. We see an audience in a theater watching the movie we're watching. It's a film about seeing, making, and watching, all rolled into one. And Vertov just throws every cinematic trick he can think of at you. Split screens, images layered on top of each other, super fast editing that feels like a machine gun. He even has his camera get up and walk around on its own using stop motion. He uses these insane angles that no human could ever see from. But here's the key. He's not doing it to create a believable illusion. He's doing it to shatter it, to constantly remind you, hey, you're watching a film. This is a construction. Now, to really understand what Vertov was up to, we have to talk about this big idea that was floating around at the time from a group called the Russian Formalists. One of their main guys, Viktor Shklovsky, wrote this. He said, "The point of art isn't just to show you something you already recognize. It's to make you feel its stoniness, to make you really experience it like it's the first time you've ever seen it." And this technique has a name, defamiliarization, or ostranenie. The idea is that most of the time, we walk through life on autopilot. We see a street, a building, a train, but we don't really see them. The job of art is to break that routine, to make the familiar feel strange again, so that we can finally see the world with fresh eyes. And that right there is the key to Vertov's whole project. All those crazy camera tricks in Man with a Movie Camera, they're all tools of defamiliarization. He's taking the everyday reality of a city and forcing us to see it through his more perfect mechanical eye. He's trying to shock us out of our normal, lazy way of seeing so that we can finally feel the stoniness of the city, feel its rhythms, and understand its truth in a way we never could before. But this incredible, explosive period of creativity, well, it was tragically short. By the early 1930s, the political winds in the Soviet Union had changed, and they had changed in a big way. All that freewheeling experimentation of the 20s, it was suddenly no longer welcome. The state, now under the iron fist of Joseph Stalin, had a whole new list of demands for its artists. Yeah, the party line shifted completely. The complex, challenging films of Vertov and Eisenstein were now attacked as formalist, which was a very dangerous word to have thrown at you. It basically meant your art was too obsessed with style and not focused enough on clear political messaging. What Stalin wanted was art that was simple, that celebrated individual heroes, and that painted a rosy, optimistic picture of the Soviet Union. And this new, state-approved style was called socialist realism. It came with a very clear rulebook. 1, art had to look realistic. 2, its content had to be explicitly socialist. 3, it had to be super optimistic and heroic, all about building a bright future. And maybe most importantly, 4, it had to be simple, easy for anyone and everyone to understand. There was absolutely no room for experiments or ambiguity anymore. I mean, this table just lays it all out. It was a complete 180. The goal went from sparking a world revolution to building the socialist state. The hero was no longer the anonymous crowd,
but the single idealized hero. And that complex language of montage was totally replaced by simple, straightforward stories. What was revolutionary one day was condemned as a formalist error the next. The great experiment was over.
And so we're left with this big question. The avant-garde thought cinema's purpose was to completely revolutionize how we see the world. But under Stalin, its purpose became to build the state and inspire people with simple, heroic stories. Was this a tragedy? A brilliant movement just stamped out by politics? Or was this a moment Soviet cinema finally found its true purpose, as defined by the state? The great irony, of course, is that while socialist realism was the law of the land for decades, it's the radical ideas of that failed avant-garde that really live on. The next time you see a fast-cut music video, or a crazy action sequence, or any movie that plays with reality itself, you are seeing the ghost of Dziga Vertov and his wild belief that a camera could do more than just record the world, it could build a whole new one.